My name is Liz Robertson, and I'll be a moderator of sorts today. And our official panel MC is Xerces Pollinator Program Co-Director, Eric Lee-Mäder. And we've got a great panelists of other Xerces staff and specialists joining us today. So for anyone who's new to the Xerces Society, and just a reminder for everybody, we're an international organization dedicated to the conservation of invertebrates and their habitat. And as I mentioned, it's our 50th anniversary. So we were founded in 1971 by Dr. Robert Michael Pyle as an organization of butterfly scientists. And our name comes from the now extinct Xerces blue butterfly. And it was given that name with a goal to prevent the extinction of other butterfly species. And we now work with many other invertebrate groups, and we use a lot of tools, including research, restoration, education, outreach, and advocacy to further our mission. And before I hand things over to Eric, just wanted to go over the format of today. So this is a Q&A panel. So please feel free to submit questions using the Q&A tool here in Zoom. And you can access that by clicking on the little Q&A icon in your Zoom toolbar. So as I mentioned, and we'll introduce them shortly, we've got a panel of experts in a lot of different fields on here today. And we would love to answer any and all of your pollinator questions. And it's unlikely that we'll be able to get to all of your questions. So as always, please feel free to reach out to us. The best way to contact us is via that email there, pollinators@xerces.org, with all of your pollinator questions. And I did also want to note that you can upvote questions you see that other folks had submitted. There's a little thumbs up icon next to the questions, so please feel free to use that feature as well. And with that, I'll hand things over to you, Eric, and we'll get started with introductions.
All right, thank you, Liz. Thank you, my co-panelists, and thank you everyone who is joining us this evening. As Liz mentioned, my name is Eric Lee-Mäder. I am joining from Port Townsend, Washington, here on the Olympic Peninsula. I am enjoying happy hour with my Le Brun French cider, and in case that runs out, I've got my backup right here. I work primarily on private sector partnerships at the Xerces Society, work with, especially with the natural and organic food industry on sustainable sourcing initiatives, and work with my team really closely on our flagship eco-label or food product certification, Be Better Certified. I'll come back here in a moment and talk a little bit more about the Q&A format of today. We've got some fun door prizes and poll questions that will also intersperse throughout the hour here. But before we get into that, let's do a full set of introductions here. And I will just go in order here on the screen and hand it over next to Stephanie Frischie.
Hi, everyone. I am Stephanie Frischie. I am joining our Pollinator Week happy hour from West Central Indiana, near the city of West Lafayette. And I am the agronomist and native plant materials specialist on Xerces Pollinator team. And I get to fill a role as a plant ecologist, studying and understanding and teaching about all the ways that insects and plants work together in landscapes and fit together, and how they can be grown to create habitat in different landscapes as well.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. And Kelly in New Jersey.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Gill. I'm a senior pollinator conservation specialist stationed in New Jersey, right across the bridge from Philadelphia. I provide technical assistance through a partnership with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service for farm bill conservation programs for wildlife with a focus on pollinators. And I cover several states in the region. And I'm very happy to be here, and I hope we have a good, fun time. This is an interesting thing that we haven't done before, so I'm super excited to engage with everybody that's attending.
Thank you, Kelly. And Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Hoyle, and I'm on the pesticide team here at Xerces. My work focuses on reducing the use of pesticides in agriculture and in our communities, and especially on assessing the risks that pesticides can pose to native pollinators. I've been with Xerces for about 5 years now, and my background is mostly in federal policy. I am based in Truckee, California, and really enjoy exploring the Sierra Nevada when I'm not at work.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And my Zoom screen is covering up the list of panelists, but I think I see Jennifer's name peeking out from under there. Is that you, Jennifer?
Yep, that's me. Hi, I'm Jennifer Hopwood. I'm coming to you from Omaha, Nebraska. And my work looks at the overlap between pollinators and their habitat and other beneficial insects like predators or insects that are involved in soil health. And I work in a variety of landscapes, but primarily on farms and rights of way.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. And Karin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Karin Jokela. I am here in southeastern Minnesota. I'm a pollinator conservation planner and also, like Kelly, a partner biologist for the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. And basically that means I provide pollinator and technical assistance to farmers and to conservation staff in Minnesota and in Wisconsin. And I also do a lot of trainings for that same audience. So at agricultural conferences or in the field or lately virtually. And then in addition to my role as a partner biologist, my husband and I also have a diversified vegetable farm. So if there are any farmers in the audience today, I've had this privilege of being able to experiment with a lot of the practices that we at Xerces play around with and figure out the challenges and the successes and have some real practical experience right in the backyard. So I can certainly answer some farm related questions if that's of interest.
Fantastic. Thank you, Karin. And Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela Laws. I'm in Sacramento, California. I'm on our endangered species team. I'm also the climate change lead at Xerces. And my work is based on creating habitat. I work a lot with the pollinator team to create habitat in California, working with land managers of state and federal agencies to promote pollinators and also monarch butterflies.
Cool. Thank you, Angela. Molly.
Hi, I'm Molly Martin, and I'm the Bee City USA coordinator. And I just realized I'm the only person on this panel from Oregon, which is where Xerces' main office is based, which about half the staff's based in Oregon. And so I run Bee City USA and Bee Campus USA, which are initiatives of Xerces that invite cities and towns and college and university campuses to make a set of commitments to protect pollinators.
Great. Thank you, Molly. And finally, Ray.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ray Moranz. I'm Grazing Lands Pollinator Ecologist for Xerces Society. And I'm a partner biologist with the USDA NRCS, specifically their Central National Technology Support Center based in Fort Worth, Texas. I live and work here in North Central Oklahoma. The picture you see in my background is of a site I visited yesterday, full of milkweeds right now, really beautiful. And that's a big part of what I work on. I work on pollinator conservation in general, but a heavy focus on monarch butterflies, hence a lot of work with milkweeds and nectar plants for monarchs. I have side gigs doing research for Oklahoma State University. So I was out today searching for rare butterflies. And then my big hobby is pretty much an obsession, which is to convert as much of our farm to pollinator habitat as possible. And it's a lot of work. We've moved numerous tons of soil by hand, but it's we're making a lot of progress and planting hundreds and hundreds of beautiful things. Thanks.
Great. And Ray didn't mention it, but he's a big fan of fire as well. So
oh yeah, absolutely.
Got that. Thank you all for the introductions. So this is an open forum. It is truly a chance to ask us almost anything. We may filter a few things. But we are here to, because it's Pollinator Week, of course, to talk about pollinators, pollinator ecology, pollinator conservation. We are here to talk about habitat restoration, if you've got questions about that. And as you can see, we've got folks from literally almost all over the country. And speaking on behalf of our team, we have actively worked in all 50 states. We've done some work in US territories. We've got a pretty good international portfolio of work as well. So I think we understand a lot of different landscapes, a lot of different ecoregions. We're happy to talk about that. Of course, pesticides are fair game, community organizing, and urban conservation efforts for pollinators are fair game. If you've got questions about climate change or climate resilience and pollinators, certainly bring those to the table as well. And we have had so much interest in this that we've actually had some questions already emailed to us in advance. But what I will do now is I will turn it over to Liz for the first question. And then from there, we'll sort of figure out who on the panel might take this. So Liz, what do we have for a first question?
All right, let's jump right in with recommendations to combat bindweed. So this person has tried hand digging, thick bark mulches, cardboard, no water, etc., but the bindweed is still there. They live in Sacramento, California, and have bindweed choking out areas that they would like to grow pollinator attracting plants.
All right. And I should say thank you for mentioning where in the country you are located. That helps us sort of figure out a good point person for that. That said, all of us who work in habitat restoration have probably dealt with bindweed at one point or another. It's pretty ubiquitous and equally tenacious wherever you are. I am going to probably single out our agronomist and plant materials specialist for this, since it's a weed control issue. Stephanie, you got thoughts on this?
Sure. I am in Indiana, and I spent about an hour last night working in the flower beds around my house, pulling out the same weed. So I can definitely relate. And, honestly, it had been about 2 weeks since I went through the flower beds and weeded it. So some mornings I was coming out and actually really enjoying the carpet of bindweed flowers that were there. But, I'm working with a smaller area here. That can be a factor also in choosing which management method to use. If you're just working in flower beds, my suggestion would be to encourage you to just continue to kind of cut that or pinch that off as close to the ground as you can. Those are really deep roots. It's an amazingly resilient plant because, as you said, you're not giving any water to it. You're doing all these things to try to slow it down, but to no avail. I've also, all the weeds that I pulled out, I just continued to lay those down and let those be a mulch on top of it too. But I don't know that I'm offering any other suggestions other than what you're already doing. So I'd also, open up the floor to anyone else and other suggestions.
Yeah, and for the panelists, if you've got thoughts, feel free to raise your hand. But I would add, not being successful at bindweed control myself, that tilling it up makes it worse, since you spread out more rhizomes and create more plants. And interestingly, solarization, a practice we oftentimes promote, which uses clear greenhouse plastic on the ground to kill weeds, to prepare an area for for reseeding with native plants, I have not had a lot of success in controlling bindweed long-term with that either. It is a tough plant. And I think my experience pulling, constant pulling until you can really deplete that root system is about the best success I've had with it. Karin.
Just add one more thing, because I was looking at this recently, maybe yesterday, on field bindweed, and it's it's Midwest centric, but I think the data would be useful nationally. But in the Midwest, we have something called the Midwest Invasive Plant Network Database, MIPN database. And it has a number of different invasive species in there. And they have really good information about non-chemical and chemical controls for various invasive species. And it gives you a rating of effectiveness in the year that you apply the treatment and the year after. And so it's like a 4 or 5 star rating for each year. And so it's really helpful to compare all the different methods all in one place. So it's worth looking at, even if you're in California, because I think some of the methods would be applicable.
Awesome, thank you. All right. I feel like I could spend the evening just talking about bindweed, but I'm gonna go back to you, Liz, and let you pick our next question.
Thanks, Eric. And I'm going to say that this is a good time for a quick poll. So if you're here on Zoom and you want to participate, we've got a question up. And the first question here is, what percentage of the world's roughly 250,000 flowering plants are estimated to rely on animal pollination? So we'll give that another 30 seconds here, and then we will jump right back into questions because we're getting a lot of those submitted, which is great.
And I'm bummed out it says panelists can't vote. I would probably get this wrong anyway.
No, I think you know this one, Eric. All right, so just another couple seconds here. All right, so let's take a look at these results. So thank you everyone for participating. And yeah, so this is, I kind of talked with Eric about this a little bit. It's a bit of a moving target, but most estimates are between that 75 to 100%. I think lately I've seen it fall on 85%, but so yeah, so that's just an incredible co-evolution, and it just goes to show how important pollinators really are to so many ecological systems around the globe. So thank you, everybody. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, we've got a smart crowd here, obviously. And I've seen this number tick upwards in the research over the years. Someone, I'm sure one of you is more familiar with the latest and greatest study on this. I thought it was around 90%.
Very cool. We love those kind of facts here at Xerces. So it's fun to get to nerd out with everybody here today, because usually we're just talking to each other. But on to the next question. So this one asks specifically some questions about bees. So do bees groom and pack pollen into their body hairs and baskets, or does it just end up there as they move around the flower?
I'm going straight to Jennifer Hopwood on this.
Yeah, they usually do groom it off their body. So when they visit flowers, different species will have different strategies of extracting the pollen. So they might wiggle a whole bunch or vibrate. They get it all over their body, and then they'll take a moment and groom it and then move it to their pollen carrying hairs, or if they're bumblebees, into their corbicula, their pollen basket.
Thank you. A lot of us joke behind the scenes that Jennifer is like the real entomologist at Xerces. So thank you, Jennifer. What do we got next, Liz?
All right. Well, we knew this one was coming, so I feel like we should just go ahead and tackle it. And that is, what are good ways to control mosquitoes while not harming pollinators?
Oh, yeah. All right. Sarah Hoyle, you're up.
Thank you. That's a great question. We do have some good resources out on mosquito management, and I'll drop the link to those in the chat here in just a second. If I can get back to it. So basically, there are a lot of different ways to tackle mosquito management depending on what ecosystem or what community you're working with, and what the resources are, and kind of what ecosystem you're trying to control mosquitoes in. Often we recommend that a mosquito management program really be rooted in prevention and in larval control and those kind of first steps, and recommend against aerial spraying whenever possible. And I think that part of the question relates to some of the residential mosquito control options that are out there. There are quite a few companies that will come out and treat yards and that sort of thing for mosquitoes with a wide variety of active ingredients that are being used for the pesticides in those products. And often we generally recommend against doing those treatments. Even some of the products that are considered to be more natural by the companies can still obviously have impacts on beneficial insects and our native pollinators. So we definitely caution people away from those. One question that we've been getting a lot lately is sort of how to have conversations with neighbors who may be engaging some of these services or using sprays in their backyard, and kind of how to approach that conversation. And it can be, a tough conversation to have with your neighbor about what their pesticide use might be and how that's impacting your yard and your family and the ecology of your area. So I definitely recognize that that's a hard conversation to have, and we're trying to kind of provide some different recommendations around how to have those conversations. So we're working on some additional materials on mosquito management in communities that should be coming out in the next year or so. But we do have a new fact sheet on mosquito management at home and some other good resources on that webpage that we have about mosquito management. So it's a tough conversation, but there are good ways to work with your community and with your neighbors on making sure that whatever management options are being selected are as benign as they can be.
Hey, thanks for that, Sarah. If I could stay on this topic for a moment, I'm wondering, Molly, this must come up with some of the bee cities out there. I'm sure that there are bee cities that have a lot of mosquito issues and active municipal mosquito management programs or private sector mosquito management programs. Have you seen examples of any of the bee cities who have taken this on as part of the more holistic work they're doing for pollinator conservation?
Yeah, the one that kind of comes to mind is Decatur, Georgia, who's done a lot of work around mosquito management and making it more pollinator friendly. And they kind of, in the midst of the pandemic, took it on themselves, the Bee City committee members, to contact the city and set up a bunch of meetings. And then they came out of it with a plan for the committee to work with the city to try to find better ways to manage mosquitoes that aren't going to hurt the pollinators as much. And they actually created a website with a whole bunch of information. So if you Google Decatur, Georgia, Bee City mosquitoes, you'll probably find that. And they have some great yard signs and other information.
Excellent, thank you. What's on deck, Liz?
On deck, I think this is a good time to do our first door prize. So if you're not familiar, Xerces has a handful of books that are out there, and these are really great resources. I still make them Christmas gifts around the holidays, and we have a pollinator habitat sign, and we just recently released that as well in Spanish. But so our first prize winner tonight is Kathy Streep. So Kathy, keep an eye out for an email, and I'll follow up with you, and you'll get to choose either a Xerces book or a pollinator habitat sign as your prize. So we'll have a few more of those throughout the day here, but let me get back to our next questions. Oh yeah, okay, so we're about 25 minutes in, and it's about time we got to a butterfly question. So this one says, Doug Ptolemy has said that willow is an important host species for caterpillars in Washington. Does it matter if it is a native salix, or will any willows serve as hosts?
Okay. So I want to actually dissect this with a few people, because I sometimes grapple with the same question being over here on the West Coast, and Doug's fantastic work is so zoomed in on plants of the East that I'm sometimes trying to translate butterfly host plants to my region. But first, I'm definitely going to Ray for some thoughts on this, and then maybe we can move a little further west from there. Ray, what do you think? And you are on mute, my friend.
Hitting the wrong button, sorry. Well, my answer will be quick, and that is I do not know. I do not know if specifically if they use the exotic willows. So you know, around here we have native willows, and I get viceroys on them every year, but I don't. So I don't know if they use them. Does anybody else know?
I'm not seeing any hands. Butterfly host plants are always a mystery, right? Because for a lot of species, a lot of butterflies, we know what they use, but then there's, you know, all these unknown things that unless somebody sees a caterpillar and can identify the caterpillar, it's likely that for a lot of butterflies, they have a huge host plant range that we don't know about because nobody's ever detected the caterpillars on them. But, you know, Doug has certainly extolled the virtues of willows as well as oaks. And here I am living in an area where I've got some oaks, one species of native oak and several species of native willows, but they're not the dominant part of the landscape. If I could, I think I'd go to Angela. I know that you know, Angela, a lot of your work's focused on monarchs in California, but just thinking about the California landscape, which does have oaks as well. In terms of other butterfly host plants, like kind of key species for the West, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, a lot of times, like you were saying, a butterfly may use a particular genus as host plants, and we don't know how many species within that particular genus they might use. I think that there are a lot of advantages to using the native species just because they're going to be adapted to the local climate. So I think that's an advantage of going with the native species, but it's hard to say with this particular willows.
Yeah. All of that said, you know, I think to your point, Angela, there's, for most regions of the country, there are native willows and there are native oaks. So I think to the extent that, you know, you can focus on those species in at least new plantings and new habitat restoration, you know, you're likely to see dividends from the use of those native species. Liz, you want to queue up another one for us?
Yeah, we'll keep it on butterflies for a moment. I know we have in our Xerces community a lot of community scientists that are out there doing monitoring and contributing data. So this question says, when you have a butterfly in a butterfly net, how do you safely pinch their wings? Oftentimes the butterflies are flapping so hard, I have a hard time pinching them safely.
All right, Ray.
That's one I can answer. I've captured hundreds of butterflies and taken them out of nets, maybe thousands. One of the key things is that you, any way you can, your both hands, one hand, try to constrict the net to greatly limit the area within which the butterfly can flap, because you don't want it flapping, you know, flying back and forth and damaging its wings. Butterflies are a lot tougher than most people give them credit for. but they can injure their wings. So you want to constrict the net a little bit so they have a small space. So I'm right-handed, so I'd use my left hand to constrict the net, get the butterfly trapped in that small space, use my right hand, slip it through a hole into that space, and just try to trap it up against the side of the net so that the wings are up. And then it's been a while since I've caught one, actually, probably not since last summer, but you pinch them right, pinch the wings not that far behind the head. That's a nice safe place. And you can catch some butterflies if you're doing this. If you were doing tagging, for instance, you could catch it and tag it, and then maybe find it again a week later and catch it and release it, and then again a week later. They're tough in general. We don't recommend people doing this willy-nilly, but for scientific purposes, for community science, it's worth doing, and you'll get the hang of it. Thanks.
Cool. Anyone else have thoughts before I point people to another resource? Sticking with the butterfly theme for a moment here, both the host plant theme and then just general butterfly awareness, butterfly observations. We do have our book, Gardening for Butterflies, which has a huge range of host plant lists in it, including trees and shrubs for different regions. But there are also sections in here on just observing butterflies in your garden. There is actually even a bit in here about sort of softer pest management options, thinking back to the question about mosquito control. So check this out if you are interested in getting up close with butterflies in your own yard or garden or community and planting for them. Liz, do we have another question, or are we, where are we on the schedule here? I can't wait to see our next poll question.
Yeah, we can jump to our next poll question. We also have our next raffle winner. So Diane Arvin, keep an eye out for an email from me, and you'll get to choose. Maybe you can choose gardening for butterflies if you're interested in that. But let's do one more question before we get to our next poll. So this one is, I'm in South Central Pennsylvania and I'm gradually converting my pollinator plots to natives. Should I worry that my remaining non-natives are providing poor nutrition in pollen and nectar for solitary and bumblebees, butterflies, and other native pollinators?
Haha, Kelly.
I could take that one. I think as long as you have a diversity of plants and that you're tipping the balance toward those native species, that you are going to be providing a diversity of blooms throughout the season, including, those high quality resources that pollinators need. I myself have some of those species in my garden, which is in a more urban area. It's contained. We wouldn't use some of those species when we're doing restoration in natural areas. But yes, you could have plants like that in your garden, and it's important sometimes just to have plants that you like, so long as they're not invasive species. So I think you're doing a great job.
Kelly, you've done a ton of habitat work in Pennsylvania. What do you have, like a few favorite plants that are like your go-to, like workhorse species?
I do, and some of them were already mentioned. Pycnanthemum, the mountain mints, is a winner early in the season. Penstemon, the beard tongues, are great bumblebee plants. They're one of the early blooming plants that are out as far as wildflowers go when bumblebees are emerging. And I'm a huge advocate for flowering trees and shrubs, especially for smaller spaces, because you could have, a humongous amount of flowering resources just on one plant. So don't forget that, even though we're surrounded by forest, trees and shrubs are really important and not to be discounted as something that's already there.
All right. Is black locust on that list? No.
No. Not for me. I mean, my list of favorites. Yeah, no.
All right. Okay. What do we have here, Liz? Are we doing a poll question or a audience question?
Let's do a poll question. So up next, this question is, how many species of native bees are there in the US and Canada? So we'll take a couple seconds or about a minute here to let folks get that in, and then we'll go to our next question.
Okay. And so this is approximate number of species. This one's also been a bit of a moving target over the years.
It is. All right. About 10 more seconds here. Looks like lots of folks are still answering. I had fun making up the other numbers to go along with this one to try and make it a little, stand out. All right, so let's end that and we'll share the results. And Eric, I'll let you talk about this one if you would like.
All right. Actually, if I could, I would totally punt this one to Jennifer Hopwood. Jennifer, what, I know that there are clearly new species that get either discovered from time to time, or the taxonomists decide that one species is now two species. Where is the state of the science on bee diversity in North America right now?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of it. It's at 3,600 number right now, but if you include Mexico, it jumps up quite a bit higher. In general, bee diversity increases in warmer climates and decreases in cooler climates. So in the US, if you live in a really warm climate like California or Arizona, you have really high bee diversity, which isn't to say that it's low in places like Minnesota or Nebraska, but it is just significantly higher in those states. So it looks like 48% did the number on the head, but if you picked 5,200, you're right in the right ballpark also. So
sadly, I live in a place with very few native bees, but a lot of bumblebees. Okay.
I was gonna say that's a perfect segue into our next question. So watching a bumblebee nest today, I noticed a much larger bee leave it. Would a queen leave the nest at this time of the year? And if so, why?
Oh, yeah. I'm just gonna throw someone a curveball. Karin, are you interested in tackling this?
I really wish you had chosen Jennifer again. I don't know. I mean, I think there probably could be reasons that I could guess at, but I don't have a great answer. There could be disturbance to the nest that could cause her to need to go look out for resources, or potentially even find a new location for a nest. There are a number of bumblebee like parasites, so that could be part of an explanation. I have seen queens out foraging throughout the season, but I'm not sure why. So
yeah, and Jennifer, I was trying to give you a break, but I am going to come back to you. It's interesting, I will say, monitoring sort of the scientific listservs. This year, there's a lot of interesting anecdotal observations about bumblebees, and some people feeling like they're seeing the very early emergence of male bumblebees. Other people feeling like they're seeing an acceleration of kind of a typical annual life cycle, like the life cycle seems to be a little sped up this year in terms of the colony's maturity. Jennifer, I guess I will come back to you and pick on you, since we all joke about you being the real entomologist, which you probably are.
I think all of those that you both described could be a possibility. It could be too that where you're based, it could be a colony that has a shorter turnaround time, because there are some that are out all growing season, and then there are some that end pretty early. So that could be it. Or it could just be that you have a worker that's really large, because about mid-season, if they've got plenty of resources, they can get much larger than the smaller workers in the springtime. So there's a lot of answers to this question.
Yeah. And the latter part of your answer is definitely true for me. In the maritime Pacific Northwest, the workers go from very, very tiny early on to suddenly quite big. And it seems to just be a very, very short period of time in which that happens. Okay, Liz, you got some other hard ones for us?
I do. I think I'm interested in this one as someone who lives on the West Coast and, like everybody else, is enduring some long fire seasons. So this question is, I'm curious about insects in general during fire seasons. They live in Northern California. And my read of this question is just, do we know what kind of impacts this increased fire we're seeing has on these communities, and how are they adapted to those?
Yeah, and Angela, you've been out of, I guess, many of us here on the West Coast, you've been exposed to the intensity of last year's wildfire season, just like we have, and the smoke and the massive habitat impacts. And certainly there's conversations around the climate nexus between the fire season now. You have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, we always get questions about how smoke affects pollinators and how it affects monarch migration. And I don't think we have a good handle on the answer to that question. Certainly, like, the habitat loss can have negative impacts on pollinators, which isn't to say that fire is always bad. I mean, the habitat that bounce back can support pollinators. It's just a question of scale and the amount of area that burns and how that's going to affect the pollinators. And for me, it all links back to climate change. In California, we're going to see more intense fire seasons. We're going to see more fires. We're going to see more drought. And so all of these things together sort of just make the situation worse. And so that's one reason I think we need to really address climate change when we're thinking about pollinator conservation. Nice.
Yeah.
Change the subject there.
No, I think it's totally relevant. And Ray, you, in contrast, are, out of all of us here on the team, have probably used fire the most as a tool in a very different ecoregion. But I know the question comes up too a lot, and it's been a little bit controversial with rare and sensitive prairie butterflies and balancing their needs with prescribed fire. What's the state of the science and the practitioner thinking around this now?
Sure. I, of course, am a pretty big fan of fire. We do prescribe burning on our land. My kids help. I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son, and my daughter in particular loves to help with it. It's extremely exciting, as you can imagine. In our case, we make the burns very safe for people, and we make them very small, which makes them pretty safe for pollinators. So a couple things to think about, like Angela said, is scale. If you were to burn 100,000 acres of prairie, that fire is likely going to kill many, many pollinators, and it might wipe them out, many of them, for a while, and it would be difficult for them to recolonize. So it's a better idea, if you're going to burn smaller units where you may cause direct mortality. You will cause direct mortality for a short period, and habitat loss for a short period, but then habitat improvement. This background photo behind me, I was at that place yesterday, and the photo you see, that site was burned just a few months earlier. There are a lot more of those bright orange flowering milkweeds because they burned it. I was at a site today. Half of it was burned this year, half of it wasn't. The site that was burned this year had a lot more milkweeds flowering. So there are very big positives in this part of the world with fire. And I am curious, this is going to be a little controversial and just throwing it out there, but out west, when these large conifer forests burn, what replaces them? If they're replaced by a lot of wildflowers for, 10 or 20 years, that could show an interesting pulse in some pollinator populations. That's a speculation on my part from someone pretty ignorant of that region.
Yeah, and the West, of course, is so variable in terms of the ecology based on elevation and precipitation zone. I do know that there's whole areas of the West that burn that are cheatgrass and invasive species. And I don't think we typically see any habitat improvement in post-fire conditions. Conversely, I live in a unique area where fire was historically part of the land management system, and we had massive prairies of camas and native wildflower meadows that are essentially gone now because fire has been suppressed for almost 200 years at this point. Yeah, so I think it is definitely a place dependent issue and sort of the adaptation of the local ecology to fire in terms of species response. Liz, we could keep going with this, but I imagine we've got a ton of questions to try to keep getting through.
We do have a ton of questions, and my Q&A thing just jumped around, so I lost the one I had, but I have two more prize winners, Stephanie Hazen and Hollis Wheeler. Thank you for joining us today, and keep an eye out for an email. And we got about 12 minutes left, so I think we can get through a few more questions here, and then we'll have one grand prize winner of a whole Xerces library of books and habitat finds, and then we'll go over a few resources and we will wrap up. So this one, somehow we've made it this far without really discussing monarchs too much, but that is a hot topic these days. And this question is, there are many varieties of milkweed plants. Which one is the best for monarchs?
Oh, come on. And I don't think the questioner tells us where they are, do they?
They don't, but so that
Okay.
tees us up to talk about the importance of that.
All right, we'll probably do round robin a little bit on this one. Maybe let's just to switch things up, let's start on the East Coast. And Kelly, I think there's actually a few parts to this question. So obviously, what are monarchs using, but also we think about commercial availability. We think about what's most adaptable to a whole range of different conditions and not super weak and sensitive, and a plant that's not likely to thrive and really take off. Kelly, what are you using for your top milkweeds out there?
Yeah, so, in our state, we have a lot of different ecoregions. And so when I'm working in coastal areas where we have very sandy, poorly drained, droughty soils, we tend to use butterfly milkweed, Asclepias tuberosa, and other native wildflowers that provide nectar that will be drought tolerant and withstand those sandy soils. In other parts where we have, more moisture or more variability, common milkweed is a winner. It can be a little bit harder to get established, in particular by seed. So we tend to, encourage people to maybe plant live plants or plugs, especially if they want, some rapid establishment. And then in our wetter areas, we use swamp milkweed. And in my experience, when we have a healthy patch of swamp milkweed, that's covered in monarchs. I see more monarchs on swamp milkweed than other species. So those are our three main species here. There are other species in the east that are, less common in the wild, harder to find, commercially available, especially at the scale we need them to do larger restorations. So those are the three heavy hitters here.
Awesome. I'm going to keep moving west. I'll go to Stephanie.
Sure. I think just to follow up a bit on the original question, asked that there were so many varieties of milkweeds, and just to clarify, variety has a specific meaning when we talk about plants and their taxonomy. So we're really talking about species. There's roughly 80 to 90 different species of native milkweeds here in the United States, depending again on how you organize those species. And I'm in Western Indiana. So often, again, the East is a bit more homogeneous than the West in terms of our climate and environment. So a lot of the species that Kelly just talked about are also really great monarch host plants here in the Midwest. And the flowers, again, are wonderful sources of nectar from many other kinds of pollinators. One that I really like that's also commercially available is world milkweed. So it's like a milkweed in miniature. It will just grow 1 or 2 feet high. It has very slender stems and slender leaves. And compared to the other milkweed species, smaller flowers, and the flowers are white. And it can work really well in a grassland or open habitat. But because it's of its smaller size, it's also well suited to yards and parks and even container gardening. I've got some growing in a window box myself. So, and again, that one is one that prefers drier soils. But again, with so many different species of milkweeds, I think the best milkweed is any milkweed that grows at your site. That's a good native milkweed.
Awesome. And Karin, you're working in, you work at like this weird intersection of, you got Great Lakes, watersheds, you got the Mississippi River, you got the driftless area with big goat prairies, which are super cool, kind of boreal forests in Minnesota. If you had to pick one or two to kind of work wherever, what are you going with?
Well, Stephanie kind of chose or said what I was going to say, which is the best milkweed is the one that's adapted to your site, because that will succeed and you'll definitely attract monarchs that way. There's definitely the top 3 that Kelly mentioned are the most commercially available, but there's so many other cool ones like green milkweed or I don't know, a lot depends on if you're trying to plant in a small space, then you may want a well-behaved milkweed in that it doesn't spread with underground rhizomes or like lateral roots, because those can get a little wild in a small space. But in larger scale plantings, that may be exactly what you want, because then the plant will spread on its own like common milkweed. Or showy milkweed is a really great one that starts to come into the western part of Minnesota, but is very common throughout the western United States. And maybe that's a segue to moving westward.
Yeah, so Jennifer and Ray, there's the showy milkweed, which does become more common in the Great Plains, but I struggle to keep in mind, you get into Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas, there are those other little, I call them little green milkweeds. I don't know what they all are. There's one like antelope horn. I don't know the Latin name for it. Am I remembering that right?
We actually have about 30 species of milkweeds in Oklahoma. Texas has close to 50 species of milkweeds. So it's really complicated and fascinating. But here's a big picture thing you can take home. We have yet to find a native milkweed that we are sure monarchs do not like. In other words, monarchs seem to like just about every native milkweed they find. Research shows that they'll lay eggs on some more readily than others, but thus far they lay eggs on just about all of them, and the caterpillars do fine on just about all of them. So please seek out the native milkweeds for your area. Angela, you got some totally different milkweeds.
Yeah, before we get to Angela, and I do have some logic to this, we're totally going to eat up the hour on just this question. But I want to go to Molly, Angela, and Sarah. I want to come back to you and talk about like the pesticide issues we've seen with milkweeds, because it's an important story and not one that probably some people know about. But Molly, you, like me, are cursed a little bit with the Pacific Northwest challenge of not having a lot of milkweed species in our part of the world, and not a lot of monarchs that move up this way either. But I'm just curious, you know, a couple of years ago, looking around like Portland, I started to see milkweeds showing up like in bioswales and stuff, and being used in like city infrastructure projects, which was kind of interesting to me. Are you seeing other examples of that creeping up around Oregon now?
Yeah, I've been seeing some milkweed out and about, just planted in city plantings. I was actually just up in Seattle, and there was some, I was at a marina, and the whole side of it, they planted milkweed, which is interesting because there aren't many monarchs up here. But as people have said, milkweed's a great plant for all variety of pollinators. So even if we don't have monarchs, it's nice to see more of them planted.
Yeah, and showy milkweed's about all we got in this part of the world. Okay, Angela, do you want to do a breakdown of California milkweeds for us?
So for most of the state, narrowleaf milkweed will be appropriate. In the northern part of the state, you can get showy milkweed. Sometimes you can find woolly pod milkweed or the cordifolia. Cordifolia seems to prefer rocky soils. The thing I'll add to what people have said about growing whatever will grow in your yard for California, well, for the whole country, I'd say I think it's really beneficial to try and grow multiple species of milkweed because their phenology stretches out. So if you have multiple species, you're more likely to have green milkweed for a longer stretch of time, which can be beneficial, especially for Western monarchs that are around throughout the breeding season. The other thing I'll say in California is we really encourage people not to plant tropical milkweed. It stays green all year. So it leads to a buildup of disease called OE. It also seems to disrupt their overwintering behavior. So definitely go with native species. And if you can get more than one to grow, then go for it.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Sarah next. Before that, we do have our new book, 100 Plants to Feed the Monarch, which has an extensive section on different milkweed species from across the country. So check this out if you're interested in learning more about some of those plants. Now, Sarah, we were interested in this question of, you know, how safe is habitat even for monarchs in places like California, where there's obviously, you know, a huge amount of agriculture that we all depend upon for our food. And the picture turned out to be kind of complicated and a little bit scary to me anyway. What you want to give some backstory and what you found?
Sure. So the research that Eric's alluding to is a project that we did collecting samples in 2019 in California's Central Valley. We were interested in this very question of kind of what the landscape might look like for milkweed growing in the Central Valley, which is, you know, obviously a major agricultural region, and then also in, you know, the Sacramento urban area and some wildlife refuges around there. So we went out and collected a lot of samples of milkweed growing on the landscape in different areas and analyzed that for pesticide residues. And what we found was, as Eric mentioned, a little bit surprising in that the pesticide residues were pretty ubiquitous across all the samples that we collected. However, there were, some samples that had higher levels and levels that really were of concern with the limited monarch toxicity data that we do have. And then, other samples that maybe did come back with a little bit of pesticide residue, but at a lower level. So that really speaks to the importance of reducing pesticide use for monarch conservation, for other native pollinator conservation, just kind of for wildlife habitat in general. So one interesting thing that we picked up from our findings, and the last piece of advice I'll give on milkweed sourcing, is we did actually grab a couple of samples of milkweed from retail nurseries, so places where you can go out and buy milkweed to support conservation and plant in your yard or in your home. And we did find some concerning contamination on those plants as well. So we're actually in the process of a follow-up study. So this is a real teaser for information that will be coming out soon. I have a freezer full of milkweed right now that will be going to the lab pretty soon, sourced from across the country of retail plants. So we'll be looking at what we're finding on plants that are available to the public for conservation work, to try to better understand, how we can encourage nurseries to do a better job with pest management and make sure that the plants that we're putting out to support monarch conservation and other native pollinators are in fact supporting those pollinators and not presenting a pesticide risk to them. So I'll throw into the chat real quickly. We have some new materials on how to talk to nurseries about buying bee-safe plants and about their pest management practices, and some kind of tips on what to look for when you're out at the nursery buying plants. And hopefully we'll get our results back from the lab sometime this fall and have some more information out on this particular milkweed project. But definitely would recommend that the best milkweed is the one that was appropriate to your site. We'll grow at your. Look forward to more information on that. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think we're at time here. Is that right, Liz?
Yeah,
let me have you bring us home. And then after that, if I could have 1 minute of wrap up, that would be great.
Absolutely. And I'm going to be short and sweet. We've got our grand prize winner of a Xerces library, and that is Consuelo Almodovar. So keep an eye out for an email from me. A lot of good stuff coming your way. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I'll send a follow-up email to all the attendees here with some resources that we didn't get a chance to overview, but just some more plant guides and things like that, ID guides for you to use. And I want to say thank you to all of our panelists, especially those of you on the East Coast tuning in here late at night. And then, yeah, Eric, if you want to bring us home.
Thank you. So I know we got to a small fraction of the questions that we got. Xerces has long prided itself on being a pretty open source organization. Almost everything that we do or publish is available as a PDF on our website. We've got plant fact sheets, we've got habitat installation guides, we've got pesticide fact sheets, we've got the Bee City program, we've got this huge range of different resources that you can plug into. So if you go to xerces.org, you can find probably the answer to your question somewhere in there. If you want like the whole textbook version of the Xerces Society, we've got our books, Gardening for Butterflies, Attracting Native Pollinators, which is rich in insect ecology and insect life cycle information. We've got our book, 100 Plants to Feed the Monarchs, which we talked about in its earlier companion, 100 Plants to Feed the Bees. We also have, for those of you who are farmers or gardeners, farming with native beneficial insects. This was my favorite collaboration with Jennifer. Super useful in terms of guidance for attracting beneficial insects to your yard or garden or farm to prey upon crop pests. So it's like natural pest management. With all of that said, I do want to thank you all for joining us and remind you that Xerces is a member-supported organization. We are only able to do our work because of the donations and support from folks like you. If you are interested in becoming a member, please visit our website, xerces.org, for information. I think we have an amazing organization of brilliant, clearly brilliant people, smarter people than me. But we are an organization that's been able to effectively reach and mobilize and educate thousands of people a year through our workshops and short courses and volunteer initiatives and Bee City. We have been able to restore and improve the management on around 1 million acres of pollinator habitat over the past 2 decades. And all of that is directly made possible through individual members joining us on this journey. So thank you all. And with that, I think we will sign off and cheers.
Happy Pollinator Week.